I'm Janessa Finley Ford, equal parts coach, healer, leadership strategist, and curious student of what makes us brilliantly human. I love psychology and neuroscience almost as much as I love laughing at myself, because let's be honest, mastering the art of being human requires a healthy sense of humor. My work guides women out of stress leadership to self-mastery that creates calm confidence and influential presence that changes families, teams, and organizations. And I do not teach from a pedestal. I teach from the practice. I have the bruises, the breakthroughs, and the stories to show it. And thankfully, I get to have these conversations with one of my favorite humans. So let's meet her now.
Hey everybody, I'm SJ. I'm a certified crystal healer and shamanic earth and energy medicine practitioner. I blend science, spirit, and strategy together to rewire your energetic patterns for peace, potency, and purpose.
So I prepared the show, the topic, a couple weeks ago because I actually thought we were going to be on air last week. I was wrong. So here we are. And the timing of this is just so only the universe could make this happen. Perfect. Because I happened to be for a week and this topic is just landing so hardcore for me and having that break from what I don't always realize is present day in and day out. So with further ado, let's talk about today's topic. Have you ever walked into work in a great mood only to leave wondering where exactly did your joy go? And nothing catastrophic even happened. No major crisis, no earth-shattering news. Like, this is exactly why there was the slow fade that took this time off work for me to realize exactly how this has been actually affecting me in my workplace. Because it only takes just a handful of conversations and somehow by the end of the day, you found yourself carrying the stress that it doesn't even belong to you. Maybe you're replaying someone else's frustration and solving problems for other people that aren't even your problems to solve in the first place. And I think a question here to ask ourselves is, what if you're not exhausted because of your workload? What if you're exhausted because you've been unconsciously borrowing everyone else's internal world? And that's the unseen part of the conversation we're opening here today. As we explore the law of attraction and abundance, although contrary to what social media would maybe have you believe, abundance isn't necessarily created by repeating affirmations or pretending everything is positive. Abundance is created by the state from which you lead. And how that shows up in the unseen is that every person walks into the workplace broadcasting something from their own nervous system, whether it's fear or scarcity, hope, calm, urgency, possibility. And whether you realize it or not, your brain is constantly deciding what to absorb, what to resist, and what to amplify. Now, the seen part of this equation is that a team meeting might suddenly feel heavy, or one frustrated employee shifts the mood of the entire office. We all have been there. We know exactly how that goes. Or maybe you begin doubting decisions you felt really confident about just an hour before. You take one person's panic home with you, and you find yourself at dinner replaying it as though it became your responsibility the moment that they shared it with you. Now, most leaders think their greatest challenge is managing those difficult people. But we see it a little bit differently. Your greatest challenge is remaining so anchored into your own leadership that you don't become another expression of someone else's chaos. Leadership isn't about matching the loudest emotion in the room or trying to override it. It's a concept we talk about here a lot. It's becoming the thermostat instead of being another thermometer. So today we're unpacking why some people seem to create problems wherever they go. The neuroscience, what the neuroscience reveals about the identities we unknowingly protect, why and where and how the law of attraction comes into play, and why your nervous system will do more for you than a vision board ever will. And how truly abundant leaders create a workplace where calm, clarity, and possibility is what is contagious. Because the moment you stop borrowing chaos, you finally have the capacity to build something far greater. So let's open our eyes.
Well, I think just even as general human beings, right? We are extraordinarily social creatures, even for those of us who think we are not necessarily. Our nervous systems, though, are constantly gathering information from other people, whether that is the tone of their voice, their facial expression, posture, the speed of their speech, the volume, their breath, even sometimes, or their movements. And we're continually asking, often, I think, without even realizing it, what does this mean? Like a lot of the head points, I think, are probably asking, like, what are they thinking? Like, what is this? Like, what is the meaning behind it? But also, your heart points are probably thinking, like, am I even safe here? Like, what is happening? And that means, just as Janessa said, that another person's emotional state can influence ours remarkably quickly. And researchers often refer to the part of this phenomenon as emotional contagion, where we unconsciously begin mirroring emotional cues from the people around us, and those cues can influence our own emotional experience as well. This can be great, right? Like this is great if we need information around safety, but I think more importantly, like looking at this from the aspect of other people can influence our emotional state or our capacity, I actually think it's more impactful to even flip that and ask yourself, how are you impacting everyone else around you, especially if you're in a leadership role? Are you taking on another leader's energetics and then taking it into your team? Or are you giving yourself the space to let go of whatever your emotional charge is? If you just left a leadership meeting with your, hierarchy, feeling a certain sort of way before you deliver the info to your team. Like, have you taken the time to process it, or are you just taking it down with you, right? Like, if your leadership meeting was chaotic and terrible and stressful, did you just decide, that sharing is caring? And I'm going to share the emotional chaos that I just experienced with the rest of my team? Or are you going to take a moment to say, you know what? Is this even mine? Is this even real? Because oftentimes, what I found in some of those like leadership meetings is that the chaos and the worry and the concern is not even necessarily real other than to that individual person feeling it. It's their perspective, it's their capacity, but their capacity is not a direct translation to your capacity or your team's capacity either. So, really taking a moment to figure out what is real for you before you then interact with your individual team members can get rid of a lot of the lost in translation or even the things that you can't quite explain. So if you deliver the info to your team in the same way that your leadership delivered it to you, do you find yourselves trying to figure out a way to answer their questions because it doesn't feel authentic to you? So when they're asking, but like, why is that so bad? And you can't really find the why is that so bad, that's probably a pretty good indicator that while it may be very perceptive, like perspective wise, bad for your leadership team, maybe it's really not that big of a deal for you or your individual team. And maybe they've already come up with a way to go ahead and solve it, that just given the chance, you can bring that clarity and certainty to your team rather than the anger, disappointment, or the confusion. Because as we're doing this, speaking from, an Enneagram 7 point of mind, it's really important for us to not detach emotionally from what happened. Like the leadership's experience is real, their emotional turmoil is real, but that doesn't mean that we have to take on whatever that emotional turmoil was for ourselves. And we also don't have to spread it. Like sharing is actually not always caring.
Touche. Touche. There's so much here we could go in so many different directions. And you mentioned a little bit that Enneagram.
Mhm.
I'm gonna kind of curtail off of that as we dive into this conversation. Of course, coming from a place of a one, what I really notice with twos, nines, ones, sixes, we really have a tendency where we want everyone to be okay. And so, on the flip side of this, well, how are you regulating or not before you interact with people in the workplace? There's also this natural lens for some of the Enneatypes to want to emotionally process for other people. And when you're in a leadership position and you're spending your time and energy emotionally processing for employees with employees, that can seem like it's leadership, but it's really not. It's actually an emotional overfunctioning. And so sometimes your greatest gift is allowing the discomfort to belong to the person and let them have that experience without taking it on or without trying to fix it or make it okay. And so there's really two sides of this conversation, of course, which is how are you showing up in the workplace when you're the one who is triggered? And how do you need to regulate and move through that? But then also, how are you showing up for other people when you're observing that other people are, living their programming, because that's what we do, right? We get up and we march ourselves to work every day and we take along with us the things that we have attached to our identity. So for some people, that looks like the story that I'm never supported, or I'm always overlooked, or I'm always overwhelmed, or nothing ever works out, or things aren't fair. I'm not the I am the only competent person here. Are you kidding me? This place can't run without me. No one appreciates me. The company, my employer, they don't care about me. And all of these stories, then the brain automatically starts looking for that confirmation bias and it will find it every day. And so you're either going to get entangled in the snare of other people and their identities and their beliefs and their programmings, or you can learn to navigate those situations in a way that doesn't invalidate the other person in their experience, but it also doesn't what I call jump in the pool with them. So I think both sides of this conversation are really important because there's a couple different ways that we do need to be very mindful of how we're showing up in the workplace. And that is in taking a few deep breaths, maybe not engaging in a conversation just yet, or like SJ said, like maybe now is not the time to go share these details with our own team. Or, you know, our culture in the workplace I work in is that you vent up, not sideways. And so on occasion, when I really feel like I need to vent, I may choose to do so, but I've tried to actually grow into not needing to do that in the workplace nearly as much. And I think that was evident because the last time that I did choose to say something, and it was just that I disagreed with the lack of strategy that went into a pivot that was made, there was this response of like justification, not really justification isn't the right word, but trying to explain it logically, right? Like this is how we got to here, which wasn't my point. And then I just said, I just needed a safe space to say that. That's all I needed. We can move on now. Like I just needed to get that out. But I think since I had taken a pause from needing to vent or whatever, it was more of a natural conversation for this person and their true thoughts came out, which is just being human, right? Like this is where if we're not being really mindful about how we're showing up when someone else is having their frustration, living their programming, it's so easy to get ensnared into it because you're just a human who also has an opinion or a logical view of the events that transpired to get to where we are. So I think there's a lot to be unpacked with this topic. And I think those are the two biggest heavy hitters of how you're going to have the influential ripple in a positive way in the workplace that you desire as a leader. And it's all about regulation, even when it comes to what you're attracting and what you're creating and the abundance that you have in the workplace.
Yeah, and what an interesting topic too. Like certainly in my workplace, which is, quite similar to Janessa. Venting up is something that they have told us too. And I will just say, from my perspective, venting up, at least in my situation, is not necessarily what I have found most impactful because just because they are in a lead role doesn't actually mean that they have the emotional maturity or capacity to hold their team's emotions and feelings without taking it personally. So this is why I think Janessa and I also talk about muscle testing all of the time. So muscle test if that is actually in your highest good to vent up as well, because no manager or leadership team is created equal, right? And what I have found to at least help me move through things is to vent to who can mentor. Like, who is going to mentor me? Who is going to tell me the truth, call out my pattern and my play within whatever this dysfunction is as well, because that's going to help me regulate as well and see the blind spots. I also, my supervisor is also an Enneagram 7, so we're often going to have the same blind spots. So for me, that's not going to be very helpful in a already triggering situation. So finding yourself, if you are a 7, your very favorite Enneagram 1, is going to help you stay out of trouble and probably avoid a lot of chaos if you give them the opportunity to see what your blind spots are. I also really enjoyed Enneagram Three's perspective too, because they're kind of like the middle road of the Enneagram 7 chaos, but the like goodness of the Enneagram 1, to where they can lean into your crazy just a little bit, but they can also give you the space and some mentoring of, that's a bad look. Maybe that's not really the image that you are going for within this situation, too. But certainly taking a look and just seeing like who in your circle do you trust to mentor you. That's where I also really look when I'm at, my break point. And for sure, I am a very reactionary human. So my power move is always delayed response. That may not be true for every person. So you really have to get to know you. You have to learn like what is your like factory default settings? What do you naturally do? And probably do the opposite of that. Like don't do that. Like whatever that is, don't do that. Pick the universal law of polarity. What is the opposite of that? And try that for at least 5 minutes before you move into your factory default settings that often are there because of survival instincts and trauma responses of things that you had to survive when you were a child. But you are no longer a child, so we don't always need our factory default settings anymore.
This is so wild to hear you say that you feel like you're a slower processor or whatever words you just used that I heard to be like, I don't process that quickly because I feel like I don't process that quickly and I'm surrounded by sevens um in my personal life and professional life. And I always feel like I need the 24 hours. I might need to revisit this topic tomorrow, or sometimes with making a decision, like I need to sleep on it and let's reconvene tomorrow. And they're on to the next thing. And I also like you are so quick-witted and quick-spoken, where I can see where you might be saying, I know it's best for me maybe not to say what I'm thinking in the moment and to have some time to process. I feel like you process so much faster than I do. Not that it's a competition or comparison. I was just surprised to hear you say that.
I process information and solutions quickly. I do not process my own emotional capacity quickly at all. I divert, I disassociate, I move past, around, maybe through to where I'm not always at that emotionally balanced state to be able to deliver that information or that solution in a way that is not going to cause wounding in the other person. So that's what I mean by like, I'm very slow to process my own emotional toll, which means my emotional capacity is often pretty shit-tastic if I respond in the moment, right? Because I'm triggered. So my natural emotion that I'm going to feel immediately is that anger response, anger, frustration, rage. And then once I get past all of that and give myself the space to actually process those, then I can find the shame, the embarrassment, all of those things, the disappointment, even. Like, I don't know why disappointment is so hard for me to find these days, but like, I mean, what a vibe kill, by the way. So maybe that's why,
Oh,
because I'm like, wow, that's really, really terrible and boring to my Enneagram 7-ness. But Disappointment is difficult for me to find, and it is one of the heavier emotions. Probably, this is going to sound crazy, but it's even harder for me to process than grief often. Grief, I can understand. Disappointment, I often feel stupid for being disappointed. So it takes me a hot minute to get through that disappointment before I can move into that more balanced state of now my response, like while I process the info and a solution quickly, now I'm going to be able to deliver it in a way that isn't going to wound the other person that I'm delivering the info to.
That's so insightful. It's really powerful to listen to you talk because you're so self-aware. Like you've really spent some time getting to know your strengths, your weaknesses. And I just gotta say, like anytime you need to get in touch with that disappointment, go on, go on ahead and give me a call because that's like the main thing I hedge against all the time. I'm like, let me create a
Really?
little dose of disappointment so that I'm already disappointed. So if something doesn't work out, I'm not disappointed because I'm already living there. Yeah, it's the silliest thing that we all do, but that is one of my common yeah, coping strategies. If things aren't going quite the way I think that they should be, I'm like, oh, I'll just create a little disappointment real quick so that I'm not disappointed when I'm disappointed because I'm already disappointed. It's wild. But I want to give an example, um, like a tangible example of what we might experience in the day-to-day of how you can lead through rather than jump in someone's pool. And really, the key here is to stop matching the frequency, which is kind of ironic because I
Mhm.
just told SJ, like, you need to find your disappointment, give me a call. I'll help you out. We'll match the frequency. But when you're in true leadership, like, it's different when someone's growing their capacity and processing.
Mhm.
But when you're in true leadership, it's so common for an employee to come in and they have something they're not satisfied with, right? And it might sound like this place is a disaster, right? This is just all chaos. And jumping in their pool might sound like, yeah, I know it's been so crazy. It's really challenging. And when you do that, now both your nervous system and theirs is dysregulated. And
Mhm.
so that emotion, frustration, whatever they're feeling, is actually going to compound. And on the other side of this coin would be completely invalidating them too. And so we don't really want to fall into agreement or affirming their dysregulation, but we don't want to invalidate them because then that is going to also compound the dysregulation. And so you could take the approach that, yeah, this is chaotic. An employee saying, yeah, this is chaotic, and you saying, yep, you're right, everything's a mess. Like, can you even believe what we're dealing with right now?
Mhm.
Or an example of being an anchor for them and holding space for them would be to reflect what they're feeling, such as, I can see you're overwhelmed. Let's just slow it down and solve one problem at a time. What is the biggest challenge?
Yeah.
So, what is happening is in the first example, where you're reinforcing or affirming their story, I mean, you're really validating the story. And so, there's no reason for them to have any mindset shift away from the story that they're currently experiencing and telling themselves. And remember, it's packed full with all of those beliefs that they walked in the front door with at the beginning of the day, of whether they're overwhelmed or nobody
Mhm.
cares or any of that stuff. The second response, when you acknowledge what they're experiencing and then encourage them to slow down and let's just take one problem at a time, it's actually validating the human, right? We all
Mhm.
have this human experience, and there's a huge difference in that. And leadership, you know, you don't want to convince anyone that they're wrong, but you also don't want to convince them that their dysregulated state is helpful either. And so, really, leadership is being able to have this dance of having your whole inner world doing the inner world dance that it does all on its own and refusing to become dysregulated with the people around you when they become dysregulated. So hopefully that example kind of brings this, gives you a strategy and brings that full circle to where you can step away from this show tomorrow and
Mhm.
apply that with the next dysregulated person you encounter.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on is really having that empathy without ownership of it, right? Like you're not having or
100%.
taking. Janessa, her dirty secret is she is so responsible of everything, right? So like she is amazing at taking responsibility for all the things, whereas I am really good at placing responsibility outside of myself. Like this is a them problem. I'm not doing this. But that's one thing that I have found within my team is really finding that state of the non-savior complex is what I would call it. Like I fall really quickly into a savior role of like, oh my God, let me save them, let me fix. Why? First off, that's so disrespectful to them because that's me saying, like, listen, I know you're not capable of doing any of this stuff. That's taking all of their agency away too. To where,
Mhm.
like, leaning into that, like, I can have empathy for how you're feeling and the situation that we, all of us probably are going through, but I don't have to own what it is, right? So I can care deeply without having to own what belongs to you. So you can tell me that you're angry without requiring me to become angry alongside of you. And for me, I am so bad at, I just want to move into like, what are the actions and the solutions that we are going to do for you to get out of this angry state? Like, what are you going to do about the thing? When often they don't want to do anything about the thing. They just want me to hear them. They want me to see them and they want me to be present with them while they have that. And then they will, when they feel safe, they will naturally move out of it and solution it on their own. So I often, when my team, if any of them are watching, I'm sure are laughing, will start with, are we here for me to solution and solve, or are we here for me to put on my listening ears and listen? Because I am here for either, but you tell me which one. Because otherwise, the likelihood, if what you're wanting is the latter, that I am going to annoy the living shit out of you is really, really high. But it's out of love. So you tell me what you want, and I can deliver on what you want, though. Just tell me which one are you interested in? And also, when they get to the end of that, just the simple statement, too, of what do you think you should do? What do you want to do? Like, what's your next move? What you got? Because that question gives them the agency. It's not me trying to tell them, well, I think you should. I'm not shoulding all over them. I want to know what you think. I want you to embark on your own agency. Because also, if I solve every problem for my team, I'm unintentionally teaching my team that the solutions live outside of them. I'm not the solution. I want a whole team of gangsters who like it doesn't matter who's there, who's not there. It does not matter because there's always a gangster in the wing that's able to figure it out, move the ball forward and do that. But I can't do that if and I can't have a team like that if I'm always the one that steps in front of all of it and says like this is the best idea. Also, I don't know what their gaps are if I don't hear what they think they should do, right? Because they're not in every meeting that I'm in. I'm definitely probably not intentionally doing this, but I'm certain I'm not giving all of the details. God knows I'm not an Enneagram 1, so I'm not giving you a recap of the meeting or an outline like I should have probably. So like I'm over here like flitting around like a butterfly giving probably partial details to the team and then I'm waiting, to see like what have I told you? Like what are you aware of? And if you come up with a solution that I'm like, shit, yeah, that's what I would do, then you have everything you need. But if you say something crazy, I'm like, oh, yeah, there was a meeting last Monday where we talked about these things. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna tell you sooner next time. So don't get mad at me, Enneagram 1. I'm gonna fix it. However, now that you have this info, let me forward you that email, by the way. Now what do you think? What feels right? To where you really learn like where are the gaps and not just the gaps for your team but what are the gaps for you, like what are you missing? Are you missing giving them that weekly update of here's the new stuff that has come in that has affected your stuff because you like me are an Enneagram 7 and God forbid we be organized and we just think people can like ESP it out of our brains. Like where are your gaps within your leadership style? You're never going to know though if you don't give them the space to tell you I think the solution is this.
Yeah, what I really hear you talking about here is asking questions. And
Mhm.
I think as leaders is so often the maybe stereotype of what we think a strong leader is that person who just goes in, like motivates everyone, gives the people the speech, and they're just super excited to go out, get the task done. And when there's an exchange, like a giving of information all the time, that's unidirectional, only goes one way.
Hmm.
Oh, that's not really the best leadership at all. And what that really is going to, attract or compound is more issues because it's received most often in a couple different ways. The employees are either going to think that you really don't care what
Hmm.
their experience is,
Hmm.
or they're going to believe or feel like you're trying to convince them of what they should think or how they should perceive something. And that is only going to create more more of what you don't really want to deal with in a leadership role. And the power of asking questions is really understated in leadership. And I love that you brought that up, SJ, because it is such a huge part, even in simple one-to-ones with individuals starting out, getting to know them. I asked a lot of questions because I was getting to know them. And then some of the things that transpired in the workplace and changes that happened, it was more of giving information. And so there was a time that I went away from asking questions and I really learned this lesson, or the lesson was reinforced, if you will, because I really did know it beforehand, especially coming from the coaching world. But when I stopped asking questions, the number of times that I would address the same concerns or issues was much higher. Because as you ask questions, you kind of can unravel their own perceptions,
Hmm.
thinking errors where they contradict themselves. And it doesn't have to be conflictual. You hear as you're listening to them, you'll hear two sides of one coin. And it's like, wait, well, are both of those two truths really true at the same time? And
Hmm.
a lot of times when you get curious about those things, they'll discover no, they're not. And they will kind of solve their own issue on their own. And they're way more bought into it because they didn't have to sit there and listen to a leadership spiel or a lecture to get there. So it's such a powerful point. Ask the questions in the workplace, get the feedback, know really where your people are. And then also the point that you made about the gaps, man. My parents asked me with this time off how far behind I would be when I go back to work. And I truly believe I won't really be far behind. The only things that will be there are the couple of tasks that I have to do because it's my position. And I think my team is going to have handled everything else. That's really what I expect of them. And I know that they have the tools, the resources, the capability and capacity to
Hmm.
handle it. I have a great team, but the team's been built, as you mentioned, by giving them the information, giving them the resources, the tools, the things that they need, the knowledge, not being the gatekeeper,
Hmm.
but knowing that to grow individuals, there's an exchange. And it really benefits the leader. It does not threaten you. It does not take
Hmm.
away from your position or your authority, if that's important to you. It like for me, for you, for us, I love that philosophy and theory. And really, when you're doing that for other people, it's going to be returned to you profoundly. So this is such a great thing to bring up, SJ. I'm so glad that you interwove that into this conversation.
Oh, another phrase that one of my favorite Enneagram ones that I used to work with, who is no longer there, said is that chaos is always looking for recruits. And I loved it. I'm like, this is amazing, which he knew as a seven. He was like, of course you like this one. He's like, I hate it, but it's true. And we've probably all seen it happen, right? Like one person gets upset, they tell someone else. Now two people are upset, and then multiply that by however many more those people did telephone tag, right? And as they're becoming upset, telephone is, I don't know if maybe I'm old, I'm probably aging myself. Maybe they don't play telephone anymore. I don't care. Where you say the thing and then say to the next person and see how much it changed at the end. Telephone is real, right? Even in the adult workplace, to where as the story has gone on to other people, it has also become exponentially exaggerated as well, or perhaps even falsities added in there. To, where suddenly there's an entire emotional coalition around something that may not have even been fully understood, might not have even been real. And then the whole organization becomes incredibly efficient at spreading the emotional state without the facts. And leadership teams can either interrupt that pattern or they can accelerate it. Like, we really get to decide, are we going to try to help add some regulation to this crazy? Or are we going to say, yeah, like this is terrible? Because sometimes just that simple phrase saying, wow, that's absolutely crazy, or this is terrible, adds a layer of validation to the chaos that probably isn't really what you intentionally meant to do either, right? Like, we don't want to invalidate their emotional experience, but we also want to separate facts from interpretations to where we're creating enough stability for all of the humans to think for themselves. The strongest nervous system in the room often influence the rhythm of the room, and the strongest nervous system is not always possessed at the person in the highest ranking title. That is not always, or even typically, probably the person who has that capacity shit down, to where you get to decide, am I going to help regulate this? Not in an over responsible way, right? Like, I'm not saying you take responsibility for the room no matter the position you're in. No, I'm not saying to do that. But you do have a choice to be a disruptor of the chaos if you want to be, to where sometimes you can just get people to come a little bit back down to earth and start thinking for themselves. Sometimes that's laughing. Honestly, like, that's well, Janessa would say my favorite one is my phrase of, are you okay?
Yes.
Janessa would tell you it's that one. But sometimes it's just laughing, to where then it just gives a little bit of a jolt to where people are like, oh yeah, that was getting crazy. I'm like, yeah, too crazy even for me. And Lord knows I love the crazy, but dang, like, what are we doing right now? And really taking that responsible leadership for yourself of, regardless of the title that you hold, if your nervous system has the capacity that is higher than those around you, you can definitely disrupt the rhythm that is happening within the chaos if you choose to. You just have to figure out, like, how do you do that authentically? Right? Like, what does that look like? How does it feel? And what do you think about it when you do it? Because it's going to be different for everybody. I think humor is one of them that a lot of Enneatypes will employ often to try to bring it back. I think sternness is really solid for Enneagram 8s sometimes. Like, wow, they're really good at killing the fun, that's for sure. But really looking at, like, how do you feel most aligned when you try to just interject and, like, stop something? I mean, my "Are you okay?" feels really, really good when I say it to somebody acting a whole fool.
Yeah, I really enjoy the laugh because it really transmutes a lot of energy, but I have laughed and it's really hit wrong for someone. Like, I don't know, I guess they took it that I was laughing at them, and I'm just like, the situation is so absurd. I find that it's comical. Like, I'm not laughing at you, but it didn't hit. And that was just a situation where you have to let other people regulate themselves. But I do want to go back to telephone. I played that game too when I was a kid. And I really always thought, side note, that there was one person in my class who would always distort the message on purpose. And I swore if we could just play without this one person, the message would make it to the end. I don't know if that really, knowing what I know now, is true. Like, would that actually happen? I was so convinced at the time. But the reason why I want to come back to this telephone topic for a minute is to interweave into the conversation the neuroscience behind why things get so distorted. And we absolutely know our brain distorts and it deletes. It deletes millions of pieces of information in a day. And so as you're going through your day, and other people are as well, and they're receiving information, you're receiving information, It goes through this filter of your brain that deletes a whole bunch of that information, but what it will capture always is the bits of information that matches the beliefs in your identity. And
Yep.
so, not to beat a dead horse, but to come back to kind of where the conversation started, where I talked about people walk into work with their identities and their beliefs in every single little interaction, guys. This is what I really want you to land the plane with here, is that something as simple as sitting in a meeting and receiving information, it doesn't have to be about their specific performance, nothing personal, just an informational meeting. Even within that meeting, everything is being ran through a brain, each person's brain that deletes millions of pieces of information a day, distorts the information, and allows through their filters only what matches their identity. So I find it quite valuable when I am away from work. And if we have meetings, I have a couple different people, I'll be like, hey, can you brief me on what happened in that meeting? I will never get the perspective of a meeting from one individual because of this, because of what is going to get distorted or deleted, what is going to be one person's perspective of what was said, someone else is going to take in a whole different context. And this is why we have the game of telephone and why it always ends the way it does, even though I really wanted to blame just one individual when I was a kid.
I mean, it could have been an Enneagram 7. I could totally see a 7 ruining it just to ruin it.
Right.
Sure. Like I could see it. Like it could be an and both. Like that person might have done it on purpose and you would have still failed, just not as
For sure.
miserably.
If I had to guess, I would say they were an eight wing seven or a seven wing eight. So I'm just building your theory here
I
for
like
you.
it. I like it when I'm right. Speaks to my heart.
Yes.
I also want to touch on too, like, what are you attracting with your attention? Like where you place your attention, how much of it you give, you're going to attract more of it. And that's from an energy stance too. So I just want to challenge us a little bit, right? Because it's easy to bitch about everything that's going wrong at work. It's easy to complain about leadership or their decisions or the changes that are happening. But just look at like what do you talk about most at work? Are you talking about problems, difficult employees, what leadership isn't doing, everything that's behind, everything that's broken? Everything that you're afraid might happen, because where you feed your attention becomes the culture of your team as well. And if every leadership meeting is dominated by what's wrong, eventually the organization develops extraordinary fluency in problems and very little in possibility. Yes, I am a 7, so I really hate a fun hating team and I would rather focus on possibilities. But we do have to talk about problems, but also there cannot be a problem every single meeting, like for real. There cannot only be problems that exist. So I just challenge us to look at like what else is there. And if you want connection, I hate icebreakers, but I really love the Enneagram 3 on my team who adores icebreakers and came up with really terrible ones to annoy me with because they were fun, right? Because it did allow like a weird level of understanding and also connection that then turned into an hour-long meeting of just talking about things like that and nothing that had to do with work. And I think those every once in a while, I'm not saying you can have fun every meeting, even though that's what I would prefer, but those every once in a while to lighten the load, but also for people to get a very authentic side of each other is so important within teamwork because most people have different faces, personas between work and play. And sometimes we lose the human aspect of people when all we see is the work persona and nothing outside of that. And I'm not saying you have to share your whole private life with your teams in order for them to connect with you, but there has to be some sort of humanizing component to you in order for them to relate to you so that you are not some weirdo sitting on a pedestal, doling out tasks and telling them why everything isn't working and what they're not doing correctly either. So there has to be some way that you are also connecting with your team, and it needs to be a two-way street. You have to actually genuinely care what they have to say about their lives as well. And I would say this is something that old me would have been, was, not would have been, was really terrible at because I didn't give a shit what was happening outside of work. You're at work. If you can't do the work that you're here to do, go home. And I left it at that. Like, I don't want to hear anything else that you have to say. Me today says, sounds like you need a moment. And I just happen to have 5 moments available, actually. And my team knows that moments translate to minutes. And you have my undivided attention, my empathy, and my compassion for 5 minutes. And depending on what else is happening for the day, we might have to choose together to deal with this later. Like, I might need to help you put that in a box for a little bit and we'll revisit it, whatever that timeline is that we have. But we can do it together if you need to do it together. And if you need to get something off your chest, I prefer you say it to me than your team member that drove you crazy. Please don't go cuss out Sherry. Like, you know what? Let's cosplay. I'll be Sherry. You go. Get it out of your system. And then we're gonna laugh at the end of this and we're gonna go back to work and we're not cussing out Sherry. That's an agreement we're making up front. You can say whatever you want to me in these 5 minutes, but we are not gonna leave here and go cuss out Sherry afterwards. But really having those humanizing aspects where your team gets to see the real you, who you are always, who you are with your friends, who you are with your family, like the authentic you that is enjoyable. They have to see that in order to really relate to you, even at a leadership level.
Yeah, very, very true. As you bring up the topic of problems, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, I just wanted to expand on this concept of problems because there will always be problems that people
Yep.
bring up in the workplace. It's just part of the gig. And really, the complaint is asking for us to examine what system created it and what system can alleviate it, rather than looking at who is the problem or who
Mhm.
created the problem. And so, really strong leaders are going to fix systems, they're going to diagnose systems, they are going to work through systems where poor leaders will chase personalities or what needs fixed, saved, rescued, repaired within a person. So I just wanted to drop that into because I think it's a really huge framework to take into the workplace the next time you get a complaint to look beneath the surface at, okay, what's the system that built this? If what they're saying is really true, and what tweak to the system can alleviate it. Is there anything else that you have, SJ, for today before we move to wrapping up?
Just two things. A really quick question for me to really regulate into myself is just simply the question of, am I responding to facts or emotional intensity when I can feel me getting amplified? Like, that's just a simple question that I ask myself. And then, of course, depending upon which one it is, depends on which tool set I'm going to go to. And then for my team, I always ask them, does this require action, coaching, investigation, or simply listening? Like, when they come, these are the things that I want to know. Are you looking for action from me? You looking for coaching? Do you need
Mm.
me to investigate or find something out? Or you just need me to listen? Tell me which one we're doing so that I can give you what you're seeking. Because otherwise, I'm going to jump right into action. And that might not be what you actually want.
And that tip, like, hello, take that to every aspect of your life, to your
Hmm.
spouse, to your kids, to your friend. Yes. It's always easier to know how someone, what they need in the moment versus making the assumption. Wow, I feel like we've covered so much ground today.
We did. I feel like this could be a whole nother show.
For real. There's a lot in this topic that can be unpacked, and it's hard to even say, I hope that you have just one takeaway and let it be this, because we've talked about, being intentional with how you choose to regulate yourself, or, perhaps don't before interacting with other people, but the effect that that has, and how to stay really anchored and grounded in being regulated when other people are not, so that it doesn't compound the dysregulation. We
Hmm.
talked about emotional maturity being such an important factor in discerning who is your safe place to vent to in the workplace when you do need someone to come alongside of you to regulate or process what you're moving through. We gave examples of how to validate the human in the workplace while not validating the dysregulation. SJ talked about how you're going to attract more of whatever it is that you're placing your energy upon. And so if you want to attract more calm and more stability and more flow and more ease, then you're going to want to put your attention and your energy into that, both in your inner world and also how you're bringing that into the workplace as well. But I think to summarize all of that, maybe hopefully it's fair to say that one of the bigger messages here today is that you're not responsible for carrying everyone else's emotional world within the workplace. And as a leader, your role is to interrupt the chaos rather than to absorb it or to carry it for people. And we also definitely talked about how people are always going to bring their stories, their fears, their stress, and their uncertainty to the workplace and to the work that they do. And that is where you get to make the decision of whether or not you're going to borrow it or become the steady presence that helps them find solid ground again when they need it. And really, that's what abundance looks like in leadership is just being that anchor.
Hmm.
And it's not measured by having fewer problems. It really isn't. I think we all want that to be true. And to an extent, that will likely become one of the outcomes from your steadiness. But the real measuring point is your nervous system. And when your nervous system refuses to become a person that has the problems, that is part of the chaos. And that is something that is learned as well as created by interrupting the patterns, because we all have childhoods and we all have things that we've experienced, and we all fall into patterning that does not actually support us. And when you interrupt that, that's when you gain true freedom over your overfunctioning, your overcaring, your emotional exhaustion, and those unconscious patterns that aren't serving you. And that is exactly why the Stronger Together community exists. It's a place where high capacity women learn how to stop living from that survival so that they can start leading from their true alignment. And just imagine walking into work knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't, and having that distinction and knowing how to move about throughout the workplace so that you're not picking up and carrying things home with you to ruminate over your dinner that was never yours to begin with. Imagine just leading with calm instead of urgency. When everyone else is chaotic and frantic around you, your inner space is calm. Your decisions are clear, even if it's in a high pressure moment. And it's all about creating a presence that people trust because you are safe, you're steady, and you're deeply authentic. And really, that's the kind of leader that the world needs more of. So if you're ready to stop borrowing chaos from other people and start embodying the kind of abundance that transforms every room you walk into, we'd love to welcome you into the Stronger Together community. We believe that is where the strongest leaders are built and know how to not carry everyone else, but they show everyone else what is possible. And if you'd like to join the Stronger Together community, you can grab your seat by visiting our website, www.strongertogetherinstitute.com. We will be back in 2 weeks, and until then, keep your eyes wide open.